actually tried to call you, Mary, earlier. I was going to go over it with you, but I figured you're probably busy, so.
Yeah, I see. I just missed your call, and that's fine. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and get this thing going. It's 1 o'clock. So.
Commissioners have received the email with the agenda right now, and I can also share my screen with it at any time.
Okay. Yep, I got it. So, well, thanks. So, the sheriff and I felt like there was enough things going on that we should probably share all of the things, different items with the rest of the commission, just so everybody's not blindsided when you hear things or see it in the news, or you know, we come to the full commission looking for extra funding because we're running out of room or whatever the situation might be. So I will ask the sheriff to take it away.
Sure. So thank you, Mary, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. If you guys, I'll start wearing my mask. If you're having a hard time hearing me or understanding me, let me know and then I can take it off. And we'll cover out. So yeah, very much like Mary said, I'm glad that she was able to, her and Robert, put this together. I know that we recently had a rotational meeting, but I feel like it's important to get this information out to all of you, kind of on some challenges that we're currently having or experiencing, currently experiencing in the jail. And so because we're doing it, I thought I'd just quickly go over some administrative stuff, our field services, our investigations. I'm going to go through those fairly quickly so we can get to kind of the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the conversation, which will be the jail. So just kind of starting off, administrative personnel. Currently, we have 6 full-time vacancies that we're in the trying to fill. We have 1 part-time vacancy, 5 roster vacancies. We have 1 person on military deployment, 1 out on injury, and 1 out on FMLA. So that's kind of where we're sitting at staffing-wise. Currently, our budget, our operations budget, we're at 64.73% expended to this point. The jail is 62.04%. Overall, both of those combined, we're at 62.77%. And right around this time, we should be around that 67%. So we're a little under, so that's good. Field services. Some of you have probably seen either on our Facebook or maybe you've seen them driving around. We've started to rotate in our new trucks into our fleet, our pickup trucks. And so really just trying to get those up and operational before the snow flies. That, of course, is going to give us a really good dynamic this winter and responding to, you know, in adverse weather conditions. And a thing that we had, you know, we had a lot of problems last year with that, as you guys can remember. And so I'm really hoping that those trucks bring a different dynamic to our response capabilities. And then right underneath that, I have the winter response vehicle. And what that is, if you guys remember, that was that truck that the county road department is going to transfer over to us. It's a 2011 Ford truck that's being used currently out in Buffalo that the road department was going to rotate out of their fleet. We're going to pick up that vehicle. It's got 79,000 miles on it. We'll get that truck, we'll put striping on it and lighting capabilities, emergency light capabilities. And then we're going to move our V-plow that you guys graciously gave us last year. We're going to move the snow V-plow onto that truck, take it off of our airboat truck. And then we've got our 2 snowmobiles we're going to put a sled deck on the back of that truck, put our 2 snowmobiles on there. And that'll be our major adverse winter weather condition response vehicle. So we'll be able to use that truck with the plow, go as far as we can with the plow. If we can't go any farther with the plow, then we can deploy the snowmobiles and proceed to the address that we need to get to. So I feel like that's going to give us a really good response capability in that manner. We started a new crime mapping system. And what that is through our New World program, computer program system that we have, we can pull a bunch of statistical data from that. We can pull data like where are we doing a majority of our traffic stops, where do we have our most vehicle crashes out in the county, where are we having our burglaries, where are we having our thefts. And so I've got a person or 2 people now that really kind of understand how to pull data from that computer system. And what they're going to do is, or what that person's going to do, it's Brandon, he already works here. He's going to start doing what we call crime mapping. And so if we have, for example, we had a bunch of burglaries up in Riley's Acres where people were breaking into construction trailers up there and stealing construction equipment out of the trailers. And so it took us probably about a month to figure out that they were happening, or that they were reoccurring crimes, because we've got rotating shifts. And so if I'm working one night and I take a report, and then 2 nights later Rick is working patrol and he takes the report, you know, he and I may not talk in that time, and so we both don't know that we necessarily took a burglary report up there. And so it would take us like a month until we start figuring out that, hey, we've got a problem up here. We got a bunch of trailers being broken into. And so what this person would do is they'll look at those reports that come in every day, and then they can start linking crimes together. If they see that we have all these crimes going on up in Riley's Acres, that person can, number one, map them as to where they're happening in Riley's Acres. They can put the dates down and the times, and hopefully we can figure out a crime pattern. And then that way we can, you know, if we know that a majority of these burglaries are happening on Friday night, let's say from 10 at night till midnight, then we can concentrate some resources from 10 to midnight on Friday nights in that area. And I'm hoping that we can start catching some of these individuals in the act. In fact, it's already paid off. If you saw in the news lately, we had a couple burglars that were caught the other day. Last evening, we had we haven't sent a press release out on it, but we're going to do that a little bit later today. But we had a really good traffic stop last night that resulted in a seizure of meth, a stolen handgun, and 2 felons that were out running around, and we had history on that, have been out distributing meth in the rural Gascony area. And we were able to pinpoint kind of the times that they were doing stuff through this mapping, and we were able to pick them off last night on a traffic stop. So I think it's going to be really beneficial. It's really going to benefit the citizens of Cass County, and hopefully we can stop some of this activity.
So, question for you, Jesse.
Yes.
So does that information get pushed out to the public?
Which that we're doing that, you mean?
Yeah, well, no, just, you know, when there is a theft or burglary or something at a location, is that put on our website? Or, because I believe can't you go to the Fargo website and see where crimes occurred, or am I?
Yep, no, you can. Typically how we relay that information is through our adopted community program, which I was actually just going to talk about next. So basically what that is, our adopted community, each one of our deputies has a community that they work with. And so they go to the fire department meetings out there, they go to the EMS meetings monthly, and they go to the city council meeting monthly in that particular area where they're working. And so then that's how we transfer that information to them, as they relay that information to their city council members and the mayor through that meeting. And then that city will push out through their website to their area citizens if they have stuff going on in their area. In addition to that, I have all of the mayors on email list, and I kick information out to them that way. What you brought up was a really good idea, and we can look at doing that as we put this program together going forward, and looking at, you know, for other ways that we can get the information out as well.
Well, I just wonder too, these other communities that don't live in a town like myself.
Yeah.
You know, and there are a lot of us that just, you know, happen to live out and about. Another thing, I've got a Ring doorbell, and, you know, that I think a lot of people have those. And, you know, I mean, I see people driving by my house all the time. You can, you know, the resolution on those cameras is amazing, but it also shows, gives you a report once a week of where different incidents happened in the city of Fargo. And I don't know how they access that, but it's pretty interesting to see that, you know, a mile away that there was a theft or something. It just kind of puts people on notice, I think.
So Commissioner Sherling, we actually just joined that as well, as through, like, very much like you said, a Ring doorbell. We've got an app site that we're working through. We're actually going to push that information out shortly through a media release that we've joined that. but we are joining that particular program that you're talking about. In addition to that, we're also joining another crime prevention program that's called Protect DNA. And so what that is people can come in if they've had a lot of tool thefts. They can come into the sheriff's office and they can get this particular marker that marks their tool equipment that you can't see with the naked eye. And then if that equipment is stolen and it's pawned off somewhere, we can go back and use the tool that we have to read that information, and we can determine that the equipment was stolen from a certain place. So we're actually looking to kick that program off over the next month as well. It's a program that we work in partnership with local insurance companies, because typically when these people have all the equipment stolen, the insurance companies have to reimburse them for it. And so they looked at it and said, man, we're losing a lot of money or paying out a lot of money this way. How can we partner with law enforcement to try to deter some of this crime and get some of this property back? And so we'll be kicking off that program as well. So we actually have a number of programs that we've gotten into recently, I think, that are really going to help our citizens out in Cass County in stopping some of this activity or getting their property back. So I think it'll be good.
Great.
So one thing I wanted to chat with you guys real quick about was this contract. I know Chad's brought it up before, and I know Mary, you've talked about it as well, but our contract cities that we contract with out in the county for police services, there has been some talk of reimbursement back to these cities through the CARES funding. And I've been getting asked about it quite a bit by Brenton, the city administrator down in Morris, Brenton Holbrook. He's wondering if we're going to kick back some money on our city contract with them through this CARES Funding Act. I know, Chad, you've mentioned, or you chatted with me a little bit about it. And I think your take, if I remember correctly, was the fact that they already get a pretty good deal through our contracting services with them, and that you weren't so inclined to do so. But I just wanted to bring it up to the rest of the commissioners to see kind of where you stand with that, where it might come up as if I tell Brenton that we're not going to do it, and he may come to a city council meeting to just discuss it with you. So I don't want you to be blindsided by that. I don't think he would be mad about it by any means. He just, I think, would like to come in and visit with you if I tell him that we weren't going to do it. So I don't know where everyone is at with that, or if you guys wanted to discuss it a little bit.
Well, we're using our CARES for a lot of things, and I guess, because we've had a lot of expenses, I would wonder what the city of Horace expenses have been. We've had to house some of their folks. I don't see why we would be reimbursing them for any sort of expenses. I'd be curious to wonder where Brenton was coming from on that.
Yeah, so go ahead, Chad.
As a gentle reminder, it wasn't a direct reimbursement for law enforcement. It was a mechanism to distribute the funds. Because had it been a direct reimbursement for law enforcement, our check would have been massive. Between staffing, the jail, the LEC, all the things our law enforcement community does, our check would have been substantively greater than it was. Again, it was simply a mechanism to distribute things fairly, no more, no less. It was not intended to be a direct reimbursement.
Okay.
Sheriff, can I jump in on that point as well?
Yes.
I had an email from Brenton Wednesday or Thursday last week to the same end, asking about this. And previously he had reached out to me, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, whenever I included that in my COVID-19 meeting update. And you'll recall at that point, there was a motion that was included on that briefing memo that had the commission chosen to make some kind of sub-allocation. There was a motion to do that, and clearly the board decided not to act. And so following that meeting, I reached out to Brenton again and just said, this was discussed, and the commission failed to take any action or even make a motion. So when I got a follow-up contact from Brenton last week, his request was, could we go out to lunch or have a couple of commissioners sit down and talk about it? And I said, I said very quickly, very kind of curtly, I just said, if there's a request, please put it in writing and we'll bring it before the board to consider. Because I think I think as a commission, you've made your feelings known on that to this point. But if there is a specific request, let's get that in writing. We'll bring it before you as a board, and you can consider a specific. So that was, and I apologize for not including you in that latest follow-up, but that came directly to me, and that was my follow-up and my response to it.
Okay. Thanks for that information, Robert. I appreciate that, because he has asked me a couple times. So I think at this point, I'll just reinforce what you told him then, and we'll go about it that way. So, all right, moving on to the next item then was the school resource deputies. I just wanted to give a quick update on that, in that although some schools have kind of changed scheduling around and things like that, our school resource deputy program is still in full function. I didn't know if any of you guys had that question. Our deputies are going to the schools every day and still working with them on a full-time basis. And then most recently we partnered with Lutheran Social Services to kick off a mental health campaign. You probably saw it on the news maybe, or saw it advertised. And that campaign is just to provide resources to our rural areas, our farmers, individuals who may be having some difficulty over the last few years with getting their crops off the fields and things like that. And then not only that, but just mental health concerns in general, with all the COVID stuff going on, people being out of work, getting laid off their jobs, with schools, and maybe the kids not going back full time. We're starting to take some calls or experience some calls for service, and getting dispatched to people's houses to help them through some of these situations. Unfortunately, approximately a year ago, we had a farmer who was having a hard time getting his crops off of his field, and received a financial loss, and he went out into his field and committed suicide. We have a pretty big farmer that's out west that lost his farm and some stuff right now, and our office is working through doing a sheriff's sale on his property. And so we're starting to see a little bit of that as a result of mostly weather conditions and them not being able to get their crops off. So we literally wanted to provide a service, particular to farmers, and some investigators around a little bit. I mentioned this before, but with doing our backgrounds on our employees that we're hiring, and constantly kind of in this hiring phase, a lot of our backgrounds are getting pushed out to our investigators on top of their personal and financial property crime cases that they're doing, and sex offender investigations. And so their workload has increased. So we decided to look at our personnel and how are we best utilizing our personnel. And so we're going to make some tweaks. We're going to pull one person from patrol and move them over to the investigative division. That's what we feel we need to do right now with the structure of our agency, to assist in completing these backgrounds and keeping up to speed with making sure we get our investigations done timely and people hired in a timely fashion. Because if our backgrounds sit out there too long, Fargo and West Fargo PD comes and snatches these people when they apply with us. So we're trying to get them employed quicker with us, so that doesn't happen if we can. So it's not an addition of a new person. Obviously, I would have had to come before you guys to ask for that, but this is simply moving people around within our organization to run a little bit more efficiently. With that being said, we're moving one of our investigators over to a narcotics/ATF position. We haven't had anyone on the ATF task force. That's a federal task force before. I see some real good value with that. Most recently, we've been getting a lot more guns in our community illegally. Felons possessing them, stolen guns. And anytime that we get a gun case like that, we have to farm it out to ATF or Fargo PD's ATF task force person, because they've got someone assigned to that, and then West Fargo does as well. We did not have anyone assigned to that. And so I wanted to get someone assigned to that part-time, so that person's gonna work part-time narcotics and part-time ATF, or with the ATF, and they'll start taking on some of those gun cases for us. And I think that'll be a good addition to our agency. The reason that I have vehicle behind there is I just wanted to bring everyone up to speed. The federal agencies, and I think I maybe already mentioned this to you, but our federal agencies, they're no longer providing vehicles, permanent vehicles to our agency. So before, when we had, someone assigned to the Marshals Task Force or any of these federal task forces, that agency usually purchased a vehicle for the person that we had assigned over there. And then eventually that vehicle became the Cass County Sheriff's Office. It became our property, although the federal agency paid for it. They're no longer doing that. They're now leasing vehicles. So they still lease us a vehicle, but they no longer purchase it for us. So that brings up a little bit of dynamics. With this ATF position, we're gonna have our investigator use the county vehicle, because ATF said they would lease us a vehicle, but anytime that person's not working an ATF case, they can't use it. So the problem then becomes is that this person that we have assigned over there, if they're part-time narcotics and part-time ATF, that person's got to switch vehicles all the time, and that's really inefficient. So we're not going to take advantage of that lease with that one. Our marshals, our fugitive marshal task force that we have someone assigned to, that current vehicle that we're using, that was the last vehicle that any federal agency paid for us, so we're still good there. We're not hurting for vehicles by any means. That's not why I'm bringing it up to you. I'm just letting you know that we'll no longer get those vehicles in the future paid for by the federal government for us. So I don't know if there's any other questions on that or anything.
I have a question, Commissioner Pollack.
Go ahead, Commissioner Pollack.
So with respect to your personnel, and do you have the ability to hire beyond what your authorized head count is? So let's just say that you have an opening for 2 investigators, and you find 3 or 4 that, investigators is the wrong word, but you find 3 or 4 people that you would like to hire, but you're only authorized to add 2. Do you have the ability to hire them, knowing that they'll be coming on in an improved position at some point as you have retirements and people leaving?
Commissioner Pollack, if I understand your question, we only have so many paid positions at our agency. So if we brought anyone on in addition, I would have to come to you before the commission and ask to bring on an additional person. And I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're getting at. I guess the only other thing that I was thinking on in relation to your question was the fact that what I mentioned earlier, where we just kind of move people around within our agency. And I do know that even though if we do have a vacancy, like let's just say that someone retired right now from our investigative division, which recently just happened actually, I think even though we still have that spot allotted, I still have to come back to you guys and let you know that I'm going to be putting someone back into that position, if I understand it correctly.
Well, your first premise was what I'm saying is that you can put on more people than what you're authorized for, with some sort of oversight from the commission in order to keep the hopper full as you have people who leave your employment. Oh,
so kind of onboard people as we know people are going to, and we're going to have upcoming retirements.
Even if you don't know, because you know the number of people that you have is not stable. You always have people really coming and going, and this is just a way to keep the keep the pipeline a little more full.
Sure.
Because I don't believe that it would cost any extra money, because you'll have the same number of people employed. It's just by having that extra 1 or 2 people, you perhaps eliminate some overtime and have the flexibility. I mean, I suspect that your biggest problem for your full-time staff is they're getting asked to work too many hours, and they would like to have a more regular schedule.
And Commissioner Pollack, that is some stuff we've got a combination of both. We do have some people that would prefer that we have more people so they don't have to work extra hours. But then we also have some people that are definitely very happy that they can get overtime and make that extra money. So it's kind of a combination of both. Typically where we see a majority of that is over in the jail, of course, as opposed to the field side, but.
Right.
Yep.
Well, as you experience personnel challenges, if you came to me, I would support the concept that I've poorly outlined here.
Commissioner Pollack, I appreciate that. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
Yeah, Sheriff, these ATF vehicles, have you explored doing any kind of a reimbursement, a mileage reimbursement or anything like that with them, or cost sharing, or just something?
Commissioner Shirley and I, to be honest with you, I did not check that with them yet. We have not assigned the person over there. We're still working. We're working through getting the contract set up, and when that happens, I can ask them at that time. I'm guessing that they're probably going to say it's cheaper for them to lease the vehicle to our person, but I can certainly ask them at that time when we get to that level, or that point, I should say.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not eating the cost.
Sure. And so as far as the overtime, though, just to keep that in mind, as far as the overtime for those individuals assigned to those federal task force, the federal government reimburses us for the overtime for those individuals. The county does not have to pay for that. So we do get a benefit there, which is a very big benefit, because anytime that you're doing gun investigations, narcotic investigations, those individuals get called out at all hours of the night and work long hours to put those cases together. So that is definitely a benefit to have that overtime paid. And then I just wanted to touch base with everyone to let everyone know that we still obviously have a person assigned to the street crimes unit, and so both the street crimes and the NARC positions, just to bring everyone up to speed, I wasn't sure if everyone knew this, those individuals are actually housed over at Fargo PD. That's where their offices are. If you remember a little while back, Fargo Police Department, we had the Cass County Drug Task Force, and we had someone assigned there. And then about a year ago, Fargo PD had their own narcotics investigation unit, and then the Cass County Drug Task Force had theirs. And we wanted to get everyone together, so they were sharing information. And in order to make that work, Fargo PD offered up their BSE building because they've got a lot of room in there. And so that's where everyone is housed now, is over at Fargo Police Department. Commissioner Pollack, it looks like you might have a question. Yep, you're muted.
I thought I took my hand down.
What was that?
I believe that I took my hand down.
Oh, okay, sorry.
On this end, it's down.
Any other questions for anyone?
Okay, well, I have a further question, and that is just regarding the 65-mile-an-hour speed limit. Are there any concerns or problems with that as we go forward with that, I believe, at our next meeting?
Commissioner Pollack, as long as Jason Benson tells me that the roads are safe to have the higher speeds on them, as far as from an engineering standpoint, shoulders and things like that, I do not really see any issues. I mean, obviously, what we take into consideration is typically if our speed limit is 55, people aren't driving 55. They usually are going 5 or 6 miles over the speed limit, right? So when we move it up to 65, then we got to understand that people are probably going to be going around that 70-mile-an-hour limit. So, with our county being flat, that helps us a lot because people can see farther down the road with not having the hills and stuff like that. We don't really have a large number of fatality crashes in the county. And so I guess I don't really see any issues. The only area that I was real concerned with were around the schools, because those speed limits drop down, of course, and are people, dropping down from 65 to 40, are they going to do that? Or are they now only going to drop down to 55? So those are a couple of my concerns, but I don't see any major issues with traffic safety, so to speak.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving on to the jail. Everyone got a lot of paper ready and their pens ready to write? That's kind of the main issue why we wanted to call this meeting. And so there's going to be two major issues that we talk about here. One's going to be capacity, and one is going to be talking about our nursing or medical capabilities inside the facility. So I just want to bring everyone's memory back up to the late part of April and May when our courts shut down for a period of time. When they shut down during that period of time, there were a couple things going on. Number one, people weren't coming to court if they had court during that time. And then if people were getting picked up for offenses like driving under suspension, charges that weren't a public safety issue, or public risk to our society, those individuals, rather than being brought to the jail at that time, were being issued a court date. Well, as most of us could imagine, not everyone went to court when they were supposed to. And so now we've got a lot of warrants sitting out there, and we've got this hump of people. Now that court's gone back to regular session, we've got kind of like this backlog of people that the court system's trying to catch up with, and it's causing some issues for our jail. So, as everyone remembers, the capacity at the Cass County Jail is 348. That's our max capacity. When I visited with Andy earlier today, we have 307 people in there. Okay, 32. We have 32 out on community supervision. So community supervision is a program that we have at the jail. It took place, or it's kind of in place of our work release. And so what it is people that are either pre-trial or sentenced, if they have Cass County charges, and their bond is $500 or less, and they're not a risk to society, and they have a permanent address, they can be housed at their house and are monitored through an ankle bracelet system. And then if they're inmates that are sentenced from Fargo or West Fargo and they meet that same criteria, then they can go on this community supervision unit. We have 2 deputies that drive around and they monitor these individuals. So they're still under the custody of the sheriff. But they don't come to the jail at all. It's a better program for us than work release was, because we don't have these people coming back to the jail at night. So there's less chance that anything can be introduced back into the facility. We're sometimes not paying for their medical charges because they're at home. And they can sometimes go to the hospital on their own. So we're saving some charges that way. And then they're not having meals and stuff back at the county. So it's actually more fiscally responsible to have them on this program. Our capacity for the program is 60, but like I said, we've been averaging about 30 to 35. If we get up to that 60 mark, it puts a lot of pressure on the 2 people that are out running around checking on these individuals. And then we have to start kind of looking at, do we need another vehicle? Because these 2 people share one vehicle and they're driving around with that vehicle. And if we have more people out there, they would probably have to split, and we need 2 vehicles to do that. So we've been fairly comfortable with this 30 to 35 mark, 40 that we've been at. But we could take more on there. We just don't have anyone else inside the jail right now that's eligible for the program. Okay. We have 10 people right now that are out at McKenzie County. 7 of those 10 are DOCR inmates. So we don't have to pay for 7 of those 10. The county's not paying for it because they're under the custody of DOCR. And Andy was diligent about that, brought up a really good point when we were thinking about this. Hey, let's try to move inmates who are under the authority of DOCR out there. That way it can cut the county's costs. So I appreciate him, thinking that way and bringing that to my attention. So very, very good on his part for that. But we've got 10 out there. There isn't anywhere out in North Dakota really right now that has any extra space for us to take anyone to. Everyone is full. In fact, we still have a lot of jurisdictions contacting Andy and asking Andy if they can bring them to us, and we're telling them no, of course, because we're worried about our own rooms. And we're not the only ones experiencing this. This is all over the state. Burley County has actually stopped their officers in Burley and Morton County from making any misdemeanor arrests at this point. They're just only making felony arrests because of the position that they're in. In addition to that, we have 6 people at the state hospital. 39 of our 307 inmates are federal inmates. Okay? We'll circle back around to that in just a minute here. We have 16 waiting to go to DOCR, and again, 7 of those 16 are out of McKenzie County. This is a weird number. 58 of those 307 are females. And the only reason that I bring that up to you is when we have that many female inmates, that poses extra problems for us at the jail because we can't house males with females. So we have to have more room then, and it takes up some areas in the jail, some extra beds, because we got to put females in that area. Over the last month, we've been averaging 20.4 intakes and 18.7 releases. So you can see every day we're gradually gaining people. And just to kind of give you a statistic off the mark here, to show you the realm of how many people we take in a month, which is a lot. Andy ran the number for me from September 6th till today's date. We took in 612 people were booked into the Cass County Jail in a month. 562 got out. So that's where we got that average from. So there's a lot. On any given night on a weekend, we could take in approximately 25 to 30 people. Okay. And then if everyone remembers, when we get to that about 320 mark, 310, 320, that's where we start to look to move people to other jurisdictions because of the fact that we could take in 25 to 30 in one given night on a really busy weekend night. So we've been averaging up around this 307 mark, and it's in the back of Andy's and my mind, hey, what do we do here maybe over the next month if we don't get over this hump? So we've been diligently, and when I say we, mostly he and his staff, because he's boots on the ground out there, moving people around daily. I mean, it's a daily game of checkers to make sure that we have enough room to bring people in. In addition to that, we've had some concerns from the city of Fargo, and we've had a few meetings, and when I say we, it's been Mary, Chad, and I, and then Mayor Mahoney and some of their commissioners, Robert as well, excuse me, Robert's been there, sorry, Robert, and then also the city administrator for Fargo. And what's happening there is the downtown business district has a group of individuals, Fargo PD tells me 20 to 30, that are regular customers that are causing regular problems down there. And the business owners down there feel like it's unsafe and it's affecting their businesses, their business intake or customers that come into their business, because these people that should be arrested are harassing their customers. So those individuals, the business owners, have been calling Mayor Mahoney and Commissioner Strand and telling them that they have a problem downtown and that the jail isn't necessarily taking people in like they should be. So then I was told from Deputy Chief Renner that I was going to be getting a call from the governor and him asking me what's going on. And I said, well, that's okay. I'll explain it to him, not in a conflictual way, but just explain the you know, that, hey, this isn't just us, this is happening statewide and we're trying to work through this. So I and Andy, mostly Andy, I should say, me and assistants, came up with a plan to work a deal with Fargo PD to have, because we can't take in 20 or 30 at one time, obviously that would overwhelm us. So we said, we have a plan with them that now every day Fargo PD calls us and they see where we're at population wise, and then Andy and his staff tells them how much room we have for them to bring in some of these individuals that are regularly causing problems. So that's kind of where we're at. And I mean, some of the information that we're getting back is when the Fargo officers go and deal with these individuals, when they're called in as complaints, they write them a citation, and these individuals are taking the citations and ripping them up in front of the Fargo officers and telling them, well, there's nothing you can do anyways. I know you're not going to take me to jail. So that's causing somewhat of a problem. So we're really trying to work through right now issues on top of the fact that we're still isolating for COVID, keeping the doors open at the jail. And so that sparked a number of conversations, very much like Commissioner Sherling and Commissioner Chair Peterson mentioned, and Robert as well, that you may start hearing about some of these conversations from the community and these business owners as commissioners. I didn't want you to be blindsided by the information. I wanted you to have a good understanding of what was going on, so that if someone mentioned it to you, you guys knew. And then I've been in some of those meetings with the business owners, and there's been a lot of them. The one meeting I went to, there was about 60 business owners in there. So I've been in the meetings trying to explain our side of it too, and telling them that we're trying to work with Fargo PD to try to chip away at this problem. And I've been also explaining to them that our main concern, of course, is that we can keep violent people off the streets and that we have room to do that. So that's kind of where that is. I see Commissioner Pollack, you have your hand up. So I'll take your question, and I'll probably also turn this over to maybe either Chad, Mary, or Robert to see if they have any additional comments.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Have you spoken with the governor on this topic yet?
The governor has not called me to this point.
Okay, well, when you do talk to him, mention that if the Department of Corrections would take the inmates who are supposed to be in their custody, that would free up some space in your jail. And also, this would be a good time to make the statement that the state of North Dakota should provide some overflow space for the North Dakota jails, not the other way around. The local jails are all providing the overflow space for the state, but the state really should be providing overflow space for us.
Commissioner Pollack, I appreciate your comments. I don't expect that the governor will call me. I think it was kind of just mentioned to me so that I should start thinking about some stuff. And I think maybe they had a sense that we were turning people away, which of course we wouldn't do if we had the room by any means. I mean, I want people to go to court and get their stuff taken care of, and if they need to come to jail, come to jail. I mean, that's certainly not anything that I would purposely do or we would purposely do. So I think they understand some of the obstacles that we're currently facing, but I just wanted you guys to be aware in case someone visits with you, that you weren't blindsided by the conversation and you understood the whole gamut of everything going on, I guess. So. Well,
and it's an interesting dichotomy because these requests are coming from the downtown in the city of Fargo, and the only way that we're able to provide more jail space is through property taxes, and there's no area in Fargo that has received more tax incentives and more freedom from having to pay the local property taxes than downtown Fargo. And this is all at the same time when there's an increasing demand for the services that the tax dollars pay for. So it is interesting, but thank you, Sheriff.
Yes, and in addition to your comments, Commissioner Pollack, one thing that the city of Fargo is exploring is starting what's called what they're terming as a drop-in center down at the old Fargo Police Department. And that would be, they're hoping that through setting that up and some people being able to go there, that maybe that could keep some people out of our facility which I think is a potentially a viable option as long as they can get the staffing or the resources available to, you know, and what we're kind of talking about here is maybe some of the homeless population, maybe some of the people with addiction issues. But as we all know, the criminal justice system is not just arrest people and bring them to jail, and that's the only pieces that are involved in it. I mean, there's so many other pieces involved in incarceration and services and who comes to the jail and who doesn't. I mean, one of our biggest obstacles right now that I'm hearing every day from Andy and our mental health coordinator at the jail is mental health issues. So if, you know, these guys have people at the jail sometimes that we have no idea. I mean, their behaviors are so erratic and sometimes, you know, obviously there's safety risks associated with it and they have mental health issues. And so our staff will run them to Sanford and they'll get, you know, a quarter committed to the state hospital, and then we'll contact the state hospital, take them out there, and the state hospital tells us that they don't have any beds. And so then that person goes right back to jail, and then our staff is dealing with them, and they're, you know, they don't necessarily always know how to deal with some of the issues that these individuals have because they're not psychologists. So it really is a kind of somewhat of a revolving door. I've actually reached out to a few people at the state level to let them know that I think we need to expand some of those services at the state hospital, that there's more beds available out there than what they have right now. And that might be something that we have to tackle at a legislative issue, or at the, you know, at the legislative level, I should say, because I think it's going to come down to funding. But that's one thing that we really need to explore is mental health services, more availability or more beds at the state hospital. That of course would reduce our population as well.
So Sheriff, I got a call from the Mayor of Fargo the other day regarding that. And I think there's some confusion between Cass County Social Services and Southeast Human Services and what the different, you know, and we're having a social services board meeting here coming up, but it seems like there needs to be better coordination, you know, with your department engaged in that as well. But I wonder if, you know, and I didn't ask him if he talked to Chris Jones, wouldn't he be in charge of Southeast Human Services, wouldn't he? Does anybody know?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, Commissioner Sherling, is I'm just going to briefly turn this over to Captain Brobeck here, and the reason is because very much like you said, both he and our mental health coordinator at the jail have brought up some issues with Southeast Human Services, and just maybe them not maybe coming out to the jail as much or offering some of those services. I don't know if you want to get any information on that, Andy.
Well, yeah, first of all, there's a distinct difference between Southeast and the County Social Services Department. I know the employees have been moved on to the state now, but when we talk about Cass County Social Services, they're handling things like foster care and food stamps and case management for people that are already enrolled.
Andy, we know, we're all on the board.
Okay, all right, so Southeast
But,
is not, so we don't.
You know, how you get
direct-
Southeast Human Services engaged would be my question.
Okay, so it's not lack of effort on our part with Southeast. They provide all the mental health stuff, and mostly it's crisis referral through what they call the RIS team, which is their rapid deployment team. But the process there, you know, we're pretty much limited to maybe connecting them with doctors if the people meet their specific criteria, people they're willing to work with. They'll do crisis admissions into the state hospital pending available bed space. Like I said, we've got 6 there right now at the state hospital, which is pretty representative of just how bad the mental health situation has become, which in my opinion is reflective of lack of intervention before it gets to crisis levels. We talk with Southeast probably multiple times a day, but we have the, you know, their bureaucracy to work within their guidelines as well. So it's not just as simple as us identifying somebody and then they take it over. There's a number of people that we refer and then they still shut us down. There are even people that their own doctors refer, but then their screeners find that they don't meet criteria. And then they're just left, you know, the psychiatric care that goes on within the jail is pretty much limited to referrals at Southeast, admissions into the state hospital, or possibly them getting to see a doctor once every 6 or 8 weeks for med reviews. That's why we have a contract with our own psychiatrist who works full-time at the VA and comes in once a week. And for next year, we've effectively in the budget, it's doubled to provide double the service we've been getting in past years because of the high demand. Just for some perspective on how many of these cases we're seeing, just at the state hospital level, if you go back a couple of years ago, we admitted 18 people for the full year, I believe, in 2018 into the state hospital. Right now, as we sit here today, we've got 6 in there at one time. I would like to take the opportunity to just maybe go a little bit deeper on some of the stuff, just so we make sure everybody has a full understanding of the things that Jesse mentioned. On the CSU, people that are referred to that, the vast majority of those are actually not at home. They're in inpatient treatment with some of the local community providers. That's an effort for us to get people connected with drug treatment that we can't provide in the jail right now. Most of them are either serving a sentence on that or even while they're pre-trial. One of the barriers we're seeing to that, however, is that the state funding has expired for that. It was supposed to be for the full biennium, but they ran out of money. So Prairie and Share House and those providers can no longer get state reimbursement for treatment, so they can only now admit people that have their own health insurance. So we've seen a reduction. We've actually seen some people get kicked out because the state wasn't going to pay for them anymore, and they had to come back to jail. On the DOCR people that we're keeping out there, just want to make sure we all understand, we are still going to get a bill from McKenzie County. It's just that those will be reimbursed from the DOCR. So we will see a bill, and then we'll get that money paid back when the DOCR reimburses us for those. When we talk about the warrants, you know, I think our record so far in 1 month of people not showing up was something like 600 or so, one of the months recently. I mean, 620. Yeah, and that was in 1 month. So assuming no other warrants came in any month, and not taking into account all the warrants that Fargo and West Fargo are issuing, if we were to take just 5 additional people a day, which isn't feasible right now, it would take us 120 days just to work through that month's worth of warrants if we could find them all. I mean, this is something that's going to take maybe upwards of a year or longer to work through that back, unless there's some other viable solution beyond just bringing them to jail for processing. And then the other thing I'll just mention is, you know, when we talk about a full capacity headcount of 348, that's to fill every bed in the jail. Because of COVID, if we go back to March, when you remember, we had talked about what was going to be our mitigation plan, and we had set a cap of 186 as our target goal. That was with the idea of not using dormitories and putting one person in each bed, even if it was designed for double bunking. Right now, we're operating with 2 housing units designed for intake of new prisoners, which gives us a total of 74 beds available. And that's designed so we can isolate people when they first arrive to assess them for COVID symptoms and to see if anything's going to catch on, right? So when you do the math on that, that's 74 beds, because that's what we have for single bunks available. 1 housing unit we have to keep for the most dangerous people that have to be single bunks. So most of our jail is double bunks and dormitory. So we are using right now our dormitories at full capacity. We are using all of our double bunk cells at full capacity. And when you look at the 74 beds that we have available for that initial isolation period, CDC recommendations are 14 days. Well, when you do the math and you see that we're getting in 20 people a day, that's not going to last for 14 days, 20 people, even if half of them get out. So what we're averaging is we're trying to do that within 5 days and move people off of isolation if they're showing no signs of any symptoms. We're testing the ones that we feel need to be tested. In some cases, though, to make room for the new intakes we know we're going to get that night and the next day, we're having to move people off of that early into general population, which is sometimes as recently as the 3rd day they've been in the jail. And that's just simply so we know we have room for what we expect that we're going to receive that night and then maybe through the weekend. So the way those 74 beds break down right now, we have 48 for males and 26 for females. And then we do have the 4 negative airflow cells available on top of that, which gives us a total of 74 for isolating new arrivals in a single bunk status. I guess the point in stressing all that is we have to keep those numbers in mind when we're talking about the total of 340, because if we get all of those full, I might have, say, 20 or 30 beds available somewhere else in the jail, but it would be very unwise for us to move a brand new person into one of those beds where they might infect and then lead to an outbreak. We're already taking some, you know, rough chances as it is the way we're operating like this. And one of my biggest concerns right now is if we do experience that outbreak, maybe if the staff brings it in or an inmate we haven't experienced it yet, it's gonna spread like wildfire, and that's just a ticking time bomb with what we've got. I know we're talking about options here, but we have to keep that in mind with everything we discussed about what do we do here.
What percentage of inflows are misdemeanors?
I have not broken that down entirely.
Ballpark estimate?
I would say the way it's going right now, my best guess would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50-50. We have to keep in mind that not all misdemeanors are the same. I mean, a domestic violence that has to come in with no law until they see a judge it would be misdemeanor. And a second offense, you know, drug paraphernalia, meth pipe is a siege felony. Which of those, you know, is a risk to the public right now? I mean, we're still taking off. But what we're also seeing then is things like sentences on warrants for the city of Fargo. If they bring somebody in on a warrant that's for, say, failed to pay a fine, they might stick them in jail for 30 days on that, or 15 days, or 45 days, or whatever it is, and then that person eats up that bed for a while. So
I see that you got your hand up, Jeff. Just real quick, some contingency plans that we have at the jail is converting our programs room into a pod. That then we can't do ITV anymore. So that was a possibility, and then we want to try to set up a meeting with all the judges and just kind of let them know where we're at and see if maybe some of the things like Andy's talking about, maybe instead of 30 days, they get 15 or something. That type of thing, but that's up to them, of course. Let's see, Commissioner Peterson, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Sheriff, we've got 4 minutes left, or 3 now. So.
Okay, yeah, that's not good. Are we able to go over that at all?
I'd say jump into nursing, so everyone has a break
Okay.
on that.
Okay, Commissioner Pollack, you got something real quick?
Yeah, juvenile detention, what's going on over in the juvenile detention in the annex? Could that be made available for some of your overflow in one capacity or another?
Commissioner Pollack, we looked at that and it could be used for that. We've got limited space there. Each cell by DOCR rules has to be so big, so to house 2 people in there. So right now there's only one particular area over there where we could house 2. The rest are only for, we could only put 1 person in there. So we could use that. It's only got capacity. We'd only be able to get probably like 12 people in there. But that's an option. The only downside to that is, of course, that we would have to staff that 24/7, and I don't know if we would have the staffing resources to do that right now. We'd be pushing it because we've been having problems filling shifts at the jail on weekends when people have to go to the hospital and stuff, and we got to use people for that. Just this past weekend, we were looking for people to fill shifts because we were running a little bit short in staff just in the jail. So it would be nice to keep everything out there if we can.
The other thing, just fiscally looking at that, I mean, if we were I did the math on that, we would have to do it with overtime, and you'd have to put 2 people down there just for safety. And just fiscally, a 2 to 12 ratio would cost us about $400 a day more to do that than it would be for the beds that we're renting out in McKenzie County, assuming we could get those same 12 people out there as well. One of the reasons I haven't moved more out there is because I'm reluctant to move anybody pre-trial out to McKenzie, because that's going to impact their ability to be with their attorneys and when they have unexpected new case adjustments to their case and all that, so.
I'm going to try to pound this out in like 2 minutes, if we can. This is the next issue I was going to talk about, and that is the nursing situation at the jail. So currently we contract with Cass Public Health for our nursing services out there. Where we've been starting to become concerned about some of the nursing issues lately is the fact that, number one, We've been experiencing some medication errors with our own staff. So basically, when our nursing staff is there, they pass out medications to the inmates. When they're not there, then our staff passes out medications to our inmates. We have had, as you've seen in the paper before, we've had medication errors where our staff, although they have to go through training before they can do it, just pass it out. They've made mistakes passing out medications to our inmates. I'm afraid at some point that someone's going to get hurt, even worse, die, because we give the wrong medication to an inmate. Our staff does. Obviously, it would be very bad because someone would pass away, and then there's obviously the liability with that as well. And so over the past year, just to give you an example, and the media's already talked to us about that, because every time that we have a med error, we investigate that internally and try to figure out why that happened, to see if we can get better or figure out the problem. And so we've had med errors over the last, 3, 4, 5 years. The media has seen those when they've come and pulled our disciplinary records, and so they know that we've had that. In fact, last year, someone did a story on it in this, I don't remember if it was a forum, and basically what came out of that story is, although we were having them, it's not irregular, so to speak, to have them in a correctional facility, but, you should try to work on not having them in there, of course. What I'm afraid of is we've had 12 already this year. Those med errors happen for a number of different reasons. The staff not understanding the dosages, misinterpreting inmate's name in comparison to another inmate who has a very similar close name. There's a number of different reasons. The main reason that our medical staff doesn't pass them out all the time is because they're not there all the time. It can take up to as much as 3 hours to pass these things out in there with how many inmates we have. And so when our nursing staff isn't there, our staff ends up passing them out. And most recently, we've been using our supervisors to try to cut down on the errors. Well, when we do that, then we don't have shift supervisors running the whole facility. So we've got that problem going on. And then in the fact that the inmates start to understand that when we do not have nursing staff there, and so they literally will wait sometimes until the nursing staff leaves, and then they'll complain of an injury, and then guess what happens? If our staff doesn't know what it is, they got to run this person to the hospital, and it's usually late at night. So then our staff has to come in, and we have to pay overtime to take these people to the hospital. So go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have a social services board meeting that should have started 2 minutes ago. So I know we have a lot to talk about here. This has been a great conversation, but can you just wrap it up pretty quickly? Thanks.
Yep, well, I'll just wrap it up at that, then I guess we'll have to talk about it at another time. But it literally, looking at our medical services and how we're contracting that going forward, potentially maybe adding some additional staff, or at least having in the contract to backfill when people are on vacations. Because when they're on vacations, then we don't have anyone there. So.
Commissioners, this is Robert. Obviously, we've got a great discussion here. We're running out of time. Would you like us to schedule another sheriff rotational in 2 weeks? I think there are a couple items here we haven't even touched the surface on.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
We'll just talk about that.